My poster was on the gender differences in anxiety, depression, and quality of life within a Parkinson's population before and after deep brain stimulation. So this work's important because we know that anxiety and depression affect up to half of our Parkinson's patients, yet we don't know whether this prevalence is replicated within a DBS, a deep brain stimulation cohort, and nor whether there are the same gender differences that we see within the general Parkinson's population, whether this is replicated in a DBS cohort. Now, the question of gender is important because we know that fewer females are referred for DBS and that they're disproportionately underrepresented, but the reasons for this are unclear. So I investigated this by using questionnaires that were self-reported, administered before DBS and 6 months post-operatively, and this was the GAD-7 for anxiety, PHQ-9 for depression, and PDQ-39 for quality of life. So I'll present my findings by going through my 3 research questions. So question 1 is there a gender difference at baseline within a DBS cohort? So we found yes, females are underrepresented within our cohort too. They made up 28% of our cohort, and this was of 61 patients that came from a multi-centre study from 7 UK DBS centres. Interestingly, we found that anxiety and depression were similar at baseline, but quality of life is significantly worse for females compared to males by 10%. And the percentage being for the PDQ-39, it represents 10% of your self-reported disease impact on your quality of life. Now, it was reported as significantly worse within some specific domains. So females reported it to be worse in pain, mobility, and interestingly, social support. So females had significantly worse social support at baseline than males. And we also found they had worse carer engagement. So physically, were they turning up to the clinic with a carer, was the way I measured this. And they had reduced engagement compared to males, so 13% versus 18%, which drastically changed as well post-operatively. So question 2 was, is there a gender difference in the effect of DBS, so in the post-operative scores? So again, yes, reassuringly overall anxiety, depression and quality of life trended to improve for the whole cohort for both genders. But depression, our clinically significant reduction in depression cases was seen only in males. We found that also post-operative anxiety was significantly worse in males than females. So even though it improved, they were still reporting it to be worse when comparing it to the scores in males. Now, quality of life improved by a similar proportion, by a 10% reduction in your disease impact of PD on your quality of life in both genders. So therefore, the female quality of life was still significantly worse post-operatively. And interestingly, the domain that it was significantly worse in was post-operative mobility. And then finally, question 3 was, are there any predictors of post-operative mood? So we found that post-operative anxiety was predicted by female gender and post-operative social support. Better post-operative depression was predicted by better baseline mobility and a shorter disease duration preoperatively. So overall, my key messages from all of these findings is that females are underrepresented in DBS cohorts. They report a worse quality of life than males, pre and post-operatively, and they have worse social support. So we found that the carer engagement post-operatively was 29% in females versus 53% in males, just exemplifying the point that they did have this worse social support. So the key message here is that we need to consider in DBS clinics as clinicians, what are the reasons that females and males might be declining DBS, and also thinking about how we can tailor investigations and research going forwards to do sub-analyses based on gender and think about what is the pathophysiology that's underpinning these gender differences and how can we try to close this gender gap going forwards.